the Hollywood Unapologetic Podcast with Orlando Delbert, Filmmaking Essentials. Today, we're embarking on a really fascinating exploration into the core of graphic design.
Mm-hmm.
We're not just talking about, making things look pretty. We want to unpack the fundamental visual elements and principles that really make designs effective, appealing.
Yeah, and what's interesting is how these ideas, these core concepts, they sort of ripple outwards.
Okay.
They influence things like filmmaking, how brands present themselves, even legal stuff like intellectual property.
Exactly. So our mission today is to give you a really clear understanding of these visual concepts and just how wide their impact actually is.
That's right. And we've got some great sources to help us do that. We'll be looking at how intellectual property law protects designers' work, copyrights, trademarks, that kind of thing. That's from Michelson IP.
Okay.
And then there's how graphic design has been, a real force for social change. We've got material from the Open Research Repository on its history and activism and why, doing your research is so important in design.
Avoiding those ignorant designs they mentioned.
Yeah, exactly. Plus, we'll get into the nitty-gritty, the actual elements and principles, drawing from IXDF.
The building blocks.
The building blocks, yeah. And finally, the power of typography and branding using insights from CC Creative. So it's a pretty comprehensive look.
It sounds like it. Okay, so to kick things off, when we say graphic design, what's the fundamental idea? What does it really boil down to?
Well, the Interaction Design Foundation puts it really nicely. They say graphic design is essentially about visually molding the user experience.
Molding the user experience.
Yeah, so it's not just about how things look. It's about using visuals purposefully to, guide people and create a specific experience for them.
So it's this mix of art and function.
Absolutely. And that function is built on these core visual elements. Like, think about a line. Seems simple, right?
Yeah.
But parallel lines packed closely together, they can actually imply texture, like the feeling of grip on something.
Huh, interesting.
Then you've got shapes, just the basic forms we use to build everything else.
And then space.
Yeah.
Especially negative space, right? The empty bits.
Oh, yeah. Negative space or white space. It's incredibly powerful. It lets the important stuff breathe, stops things feeling cluttered.
Like Google's homepage. Mostly white space.
That's a perfect example. It contributes so much to that clean, simple feel. We also think about volume giving things a sense of 3D depth and value, which is just how light or dark a color is.
Okay, and color. That's a big one.
Yeah.
We all react to color, don't we? Sometimes without even noticing.
For sure. Color theory is, it's a whole field. You have the technical stuff, like additive color RGB for screens, where light adds up to white.
Right.
And subtractive color CMYK for print, where inks absorb light heading towards black. But beyond that, there's the huge psychological side. Blue for banks to seem trustworthy, red for warnings. It carries a lot of weight.
And the last element you mentioned was texture.
Yeah.
It's always kind of amazing how a flat screen can suggest texture.
Yeah, that's the difference between tactile texture stuff you can actually feel and implied texture, which is purely visual.
Like those old iPhone icons, the glossy one.
Exactly. They look like real buttons. Or sometimes Apple used that sort of linen background texture.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
That was all implied. Flat design uses less of it now, maybe, but implied texture can still really create a mood or a feeling.
Okay, so those are the raw ingredients, the elements. How do designers actually arrange them effectively? That's where the principles come in.
Precisely. The principles are like the rules of grammar for visual language. They help organize those elements. So you have unity and gestalt. That's about making everything feel like it belongs together, like a cohesive whole.
Not just random parts.
Right. The viewer sees one unified design. Gestalt has principles within it, like proximity, things close together seem related.
Makes sense.
Then hierarchy. Super important for guiding the viewer's eye, telling them what to look at first, second, third.
You want the main message to hit first. What about balance?
Balance is about distributing visual weight. It can be symmetrical mirrored, very formal, stable, or asymmetrical, which uses different elements to achieve balance, often feels more dynamic, maybe more interesting.
And contrast, you mentioned that with posters earlier.
Yeah, contrast is fundamental, creates interest, makes things stand out, differentiates information. The Sauce-Picat style really pushed contrast compared to, say, Art Nouveau. Big difference.
Okay, and then there's scale, dominance, similarity.
Yeah.
How do they fit in?
Scale is just about relative size. Changing scale creates depth, emphasizes things. Dominance makes sure certain elements really grab your attention first.
And the focal point.
The focal point, exactly. Similarity uses consistent features, same color, same shape, to link different parts of the design together. Then there's flow, how the design leads your eye through it. Repetition and pattern create consistency, rhythm. And sometimes designers use things like the golden ratio or the rule of thirds mathematical guides for pleasing layouts.
Wow.
And maybe most importantly, the KISS principle. Keep it simple, stupid.
Right. Don't overdo it.
Don't overwhelm the viewer. Clarity is key.
Okay, let's talk typography. That feels like a really potent tool. It's way more than just picking a font that's easy to read, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. CC Creative really highlights this.
Yeah.
The font choice, the size, the style, it's all core to a brand's identity.
So fonts have personalities.
Definitely. There are the explicit things you see, like how thick the strokes are, the weight or the contrast between thick and thin lines.
Okay.
But then there are the implicit things, the sort of emotional, psychological vibes we get from different typefaces. You know, a rounded font might feel friendly, modern.
Well, a sharp serif font might feel more traditional or serious.
Exactly. And that feeling has to match the message, right?
Yeah, you wouldn't use a cartoon font for a lawyer's website.
Precisely. CC Creative talks about congruency. The font needs to fit the content and the brand's personality. Get it wrong, and it can really undermine credibility. And they also mention typography in multisensory communication. Basically, when the look of the text fits well with, say, the sounds and images a brand uses, it actually makes the brand more appealing, more memorable.
Huh. Okay, so we have this whole toolkit elements, principles, typography. How does this apply somewhere like filmmaking? It's not static design on a page.
True. Filmmakers aren't usually laying out brochures, but they're making constant visual choices based on these exact same ideas. Think about title sequences or any text on screen.
Right.
The typography choice instantly sets a tone, hints at the genre. Is it a sleek sci-fi font or an elegant script for a period drama?
Yeah, you get a feel straight away.
And the color palette in those titles and throughout the film, that establishes mood. Use of space and contrast makes sure text is readable and has impact.
It's like setting the visual stage.
Yeah.
What about within the actual scenes? Set design, cinematography?
Oh, definitely. These principles are all over set design and how shots are framed. Visual balance in a frame, is it stable and symmetrical or deliberately unbalanced to create tension? Color is huge for emotion. Think warm golden light versus cold blue shadows. Textures in the sets make it feel real or stylized.
Right.
And things like leading lines in the composition, that's pure hierarchy, guiding your eye where the director wants you to look.
Even costumes.
Absolutely. Color in costumes tells you about character, mood, allegiance. Patterns can be signatures. The texture of the fabric, rough, smooth, luxurious, can hint at status or personality. It's all visual storytelling.
It really is like a subconscious visual language. Okay, let's pivot to branding and intellectual property. This is where design gets very commercial and legal.
Exactly. Logos, brand identities, they are all about using these elements and principles strategically to make something memorable, distinctive.
Like the Nike swoosh or the Apple logo. Instantly recognizable.
Precisely. The shape, the color, maybe the typography, it's all deliberate. And those distinctive marks, that's what trademarks protect, as Michelson IP explains.
So a trademark stops others from using something too similar.
Yes. It gives the brand exclusive rights to that visual identifier in their market. It prevents confusion.
So that's specific blue Tiffany uses, or Cadbury's purple, that could be protected.
It potentially can, especially as part of the overall brand identity, and if it's strongly associated with them. This is why brand guidelines are so crucial.
Ah, the rule book for the brand's look.
Exactly. It ensures consistency in how all those visual elements and principles are used everywhere, building a strong, unified identity.
And packaging design seems like a prime example where this all comes together. You need to grab attention on a shelf.
Totally. Visual hierarchy is key on a package. You need to see the brand, the product name, maybe a key benefit right away.
Right.
Color and texture are used to attract you, make it stand out from competitors. Remember the sash plakat style? Simple, bold object posters.
Yeah, the matches poster.
That was all about attracting customers through simplicity and contrast. And legally, the original design of packaging, the logo, the layout, that can be protected by copyright too. It protects the creator's original expression.
It's amazing how these design choices connect directly to legal rights and business value. Okay, let's broaden out again. The influence on society is the Open Research Repository talks about this, right?
Yeah, this is fascinating. It shows design isn't just about selling stuff. It reflects culture, sometimes even shapes it. Think Art Nouveau, late 19th century.
Flowing lines, very organic.
Right. Lots of curves, nature motifs, vibrant colors. It wasn't just a style. It kind of reflected this optimism, this connection to beauty. That Moulin Rouge poster captures it.
And then came Sache Plakat, which was totally different.
Complete shift. Early 20th century, simple object posters for companies. Very direct, often high contrast, like that Priester Matches ad. It reflected a more industrial, commercial vibe.
And then after World War I, Daddyism. That seems like a reaction.
A huge reaction.
Yeah.
Dada was all about chaos, satire, nonsense. It reflected the horror and confusion after the war. Roald Houseman's The Art Critic is a good example. Fragmented, jarring. It was design expressing deep disillusionment. And then you have the obvious power of war propaganda. World War I, especially.
Like the Lord Kitchener Wants You poster.
Exactly. Or French Bond posters, German peace posters. They all use strong images, emotional appeals, clear hierarchy to push nationalism, get people to enlist or support the war effort. Different styles in different countries, but the goal was persuasion.
It really drives home how powerful visual communication can be, for good or ill.
Absolutely. Which, brings us to thinking about the new Hollywood generation, today's creators, filmmakers, designers. They've inherited all this history, these principles.
But they're working in a totally different, hyper-visual world.
Exactly. So how are they using these core ideas? Consciously, unconsciously. You see filmmakers obsessing over graphic details, amazing title sequences, using color grading incredibly subtly to manipulate mood.
Mm-hmm.
In branding, there's maybe a trend towards authenticity, sometimes minimalist design, very careful typography, bold color.
And everything's digital interactive now, too.
Right. So designers are playing with motion, with user interfaces, always thinking about hierarchy and flow so people can navigate complex information easily.
So the tools change, the media changes, but the fundamental principles still hold.
That's what it seems like. The technology is amazing, but understanding how line, shape, space, color, type actually work together, unity, balance, contrast, hierarchy, that's still the essential skill.
What are the really key things you hope people listening will take away from all this?
I think the biggest thing is realizing these graphic design elements and principles. They're not just for designers. They are literally the building blocks of visual communication everywhere. They're working in the movies you watch, the websites you use, the ads you see, the brands you buy. Understanding them just gives you a richer way to see the world.
Absolutely. So for you listening, you now have, hopefully, a deeper sense of the thought, the intention that goes into visual design and how widely it impacts things.
Yeah.
So next time you're watching a film or looking at a brand's logo or even just a poster on the street, maybe pause for a second. Notice the typography, the colors, the use of space, the hierarchy. You might be surprised what you see when you look closely at those deliberate choices.
Mm-hmm. And maybe a final thought, especially for that new Hollywood generation of creators, the visual storytellers out there, thinking about this power of visual design, its history, its potential. What responsibility comes with that? How do you ensure the work you put out into the world visually contributes positively, maybe helps create a more informed, more equitable, maybe even just a more beautiful world? It's a big question, but one worth thinking about as you shape what we all see next.
You can find more insights on navigating the entertainment industry and achieving success in Orlando Delbert's work, including his book, Pollyanna's Tear-Soaked Battlefields of Hollywood, a survival guide against the cynicism and the hypocritical, and of course, the Hollywood Unapologetic platform. And always remember, you are the key to your own success. You are the new Hollywood generation.
Be informed, be prepared, and most importantly, be great.
That's it. Be great. Good luck out there.
See you next time.